congratulations on Mr. Crockett. It is such a fantastic watch. It's such a unique horror film. Let's go into a little on how the feature was shot because there's a lot of really awesome elements in the filming process of this. What was the discussion with you and the director to get this feel of both having a very intimate feel with Mr. Crockett, but at the same time pulling out and making sure that we get a lot of the horror aspects around him?
Good question. Um, a lot of our process on set was driven by how Elvis was sort of handling himself on set because he was basically in character the whole time. Like I didn't technically meet Elvis, the man, the actor himself, till after we were done. He was Crockett for the moment he stepped on set till after, and he really kept himself separate from a lot of us in between takes and even after shooting days. We didn't really see him that much. So we didn't necessarily even have traditional blocking for a lot of his scenes. We would, we'd basically work with everyone else, figure out where they're going to be, and figure out kind of where we figured Crockett would land. And we'd lay some marks for him because he was receptive to it. He's an incredible actor to work with, but we also didn't want to get in the way of him being him. And so we kind of just gave him like safe shooting zones sometimes. And then on the bigger scenes, obviously we all have to block it together and he would gladly come out for that. But when it was just one-on-ones or it was just the Crockett scenes on his own, we tried to block and light to give him freedom to kind of just move around as he wanted because that's when some of our best stuff happened was just letting him be him. Um, yeah.
Yeah. As a director of photography, how do you plan for coverage with an actor like that who is receptive, but at the same time, is able to put a lot of themselves into a character?
Uh, luckily, he's really smart and he'll play to his light really well. And so as long as I built, um, like in Hell World, I basically created sort of a U shape of lights behind them, so that no matter if as long as they were parallel to kind of that back wall or even looking a little bit at it or a little bit away from it, they always had either like a half light, a little over a half light, or a little under a half light. And so if he wanted to play out into the room more or play deeper into the room, I usually had a good enough shape on him from that, and a lot of it was blocked in a way where basically everyone knew due to how the stage was set up where the light had to come from. Like we didn't really bring in any ground units other than a light mat here or like a light sock Duplo like a 40 somewhere else just to like fill in some key, but a lot of it came from the tungstens overhead and just all the rigged lights. And so it was very apparent where they could be, and they're all very good actors and they knew if they looked away from that they would not be on screen. And so, it was sort of a dance of give some freedom, but try and sculpt it enough where, you're not saying you can only look this one way and that's it. There's nothing. You can only stand in this 1 foot square. It was sort of like, as long as you're sort of within this 5 foot square and you basically look in a V, like anywhere around here, you're good enough. And it led us to, that's how we got through all those huge group scenes. I mean, we had the scenes with the four kids, Eddie, Summer and Crockett all at the ending there, and that last 10 minutes is basically an ensemble thing with all of them, and so it had to be big enough in scope, lighting wise, that we could cover big groups without having to bring in keys and ground stuff for every single shot because we just wouldn't have made our days. We were rocketing through that whole finale sequence.
For filmmakers and for cinematographers, making a short into a feature-length film can be quite a task. The short had a feel when it came to the cinematography. It felt very quick, very I don't know how to put it other than quick. The shots seem to go in a certain order. For um for the feature, it has that sort of feel, but then it has an even larger feel to it. What kind of conversations did you have with the director in order to expand upon that universe
Sure.
when it came to the cinematography?
Yeah. Luckily, the cinematographer who did a great job on the short set a good baseline for me. I sort of understood the world we were playing in. We wanted to amp up the kind of 90s sort of drama aesthetic in the feature. Just, once you bump up the feature budget, there are more some more resources and there's a little more time, and you can dig in a little deeper as far as the look is concerned. And shorts can be so rapid fire and difficult to pull off just because you're often fighting your own resources. And so this was a low budget movie. I think we made it look and feel a little less so than it actually was, but it was still we had to be really thrifty and careful with how we did things and play to our strengths. Luckily, Brandon was really open to blocking to, the available windows we had in these rooms. And all I kept in mind was he gave me two reference movies at the beginning of the shoot. It was Menace to Society and Juice, which were very interesting, cool choices for walking into a horror movie because they're just straight 90s, dramas. And so taking elements of those movies and like how they looked and applying it to horror coverage was a really fun challenge. And that was, I'd say, how we maybe expanded on what they got started in the short. We really took to heart the idea that we didn't want this to feel like a modern movie referencing the 90s, which is why I didn't go with vintage lenses for it. We went with lenses that felt very sharp and crisp in the way that a lot of movies, in that period, they since they were shooting on film, there was lenses have gone through sort of a spectrum in history where you had these funky, really fun, classic super vintage lenses. And then as people wanted better and better optical clarity, we went through lenses getting better and better through time. And then we hit digital and people were like, let's go back to the ones that actually don't look as good because it softens the digital sensor. And we went fully the opposite direction. I was like, what lenses would a 90s DP have wanted to use on their movie if they had access to them? And it would have been something like the signature primes. They're like crisp, they're sharp, they don't have much aberration or funk to them. They just really translate exactly what you'd hope would lend on film. And so while we were on digital, I still thought it was the right choice just to tie back in with that era because that in my head what one of those DPs would have chosen to shoot on. Same deal, sticking to 185. Both of our reference movies were 185. A lot of films from that era were as well, and so it just made sense to try and just cherry pick all the elements from these movies that made them look like what they did without um satirizing them too much. It was sort of like take those pieces, take what we can, like very blue moonlight. That was one of the other obvious ones. Like every 80s, 90s movie, Moon was just like HMI through full CTB, let's go. Like full blast blue. And so we would take these things and try and tastefully apply them to a way that it didn't feel like, there's a certain point where you retro fetish too much and it's sort of an unappealing look, or it would be exhausting to watch for too long of the movie. So we had to find a really fine balance between how do we make people feel like this is set in that time period and still make them, you know, not get eye fatigue from watching just too many camera tricks and like wide open crazy vintage lens flare. Like it would be distracting after a certain point. So it was just finding the tightrope, what's down the middle of vintage to not.
Definitely. And was there any inspiration for the Mr. Crockett show because that also has its own little style to it?
Crockett Show is a really fun thing to get to figure out. I mean, my gaffer and I sat down and just scrolled through hundreds of images of how, what the grids looked like on old broadcast shows and like sitcom, or not sitcom, but, family shows like that. And we really tried to replicate within our budget again, a version of that sort of ring of fire, tungsten, a bunch of space lights in the middle, just broadcast blasted look. And we did some other fun things too. Like we were shooting on the Alexa Mini large format for most of the movie. But for those sequences, I actually cropped the sensor back down to Super 35 just to get a little bit,
Okay.
change that field of view a little bit, make it just feel like it's actually on a different size sensor. And we swapped from the signature primes to zoom lenses. And I basically lived on a dolly and dance floor mode for all the Crockett Show stuff. So it really felt like we were doing multicam broadcasts. We were just, rolling around the stage, zooms, the whole nine, lit to like an 11, just trying to get the original feeling of one of those things down. With the intention of then throwing it to a colorist friend of mine who's really good at film emulation, and he threw on a 70s film emulation on top of it. And we took that and we ran it through a CRT sort of remastering process at this company called CircuitMent TV, run by my buddy Danny Erb. He's amazing. He's a mad genius when it comes to analog reprocessing, and he's built basically a whole dungeon of DMX controllable like analog glitch boards. And so he has every circuit bend he's made timed like on faders or on buttons. So we have like triggers and faders, and we can do certain amounts. And we ran the whole movie through the that kind of VHS process, but we didn't do what a lot of people might normally do, which is the fast way, which is you just send the signal into VHS and you just take the digital scan of the VHS right back out. We actually filmed the CRT TV itself that was playing it. So we had all the light and pixel, like how, those old TVs actually like halate and blast the light through the front element of the screen. It really does change um, the pickup of the video in a way other than just like taking the scan of the VHS tape itself. You miss out on all that weird extra uh, crap you get from putting something through those old screens. And so it was just from beginning to end trying to make this feel as like we'd found an archival tape of Crockett. Like it was a real tape and this character has existed forever and we just happened to license it. We wanted it to feel as, we didn't want people to think we made the tapes, I guess is the best way to put it. Like it's just Crockett has always existed.
That's awesome. You seem to have such a passion for this technical aspect of it of stuff. Is that how you choose your project? And trying to challenge yourself on the technical aspect and push forward on new techniques on how to make a good shot.
You know, uh I love the technical side of it. I think it's always that's the fun like Sudoku challenge part of taking on a movie. But for me, no, it's like a knee-jerk instinct. If I read a script and I'm like, this is something I know I can do well, or this is something I want to challenge myself to do well, or I just love this character. That's usually where it comes from. First is just, is this a world I want to commit to living in for, 3 months out of my life? Because when I do jump on a feature, I tend to go all in. It is, I don't want to take on any project I feel like I can or should or am inclined to half-ass. Like if I'm gonna do a movie, it's gonna, it's gonna be my whole life for a minute there. And so usually has to be story and tone first, or if someone says, "Hey, we're working with this actor on this movie," and I'm like, "Oh shit, I've wanted to shoot this person for a
Mhm.
while now." And that's actually what happened. I'm on a movie right now, and I love the script. The script is incredible, but when I heard who the lead was, I just had to take it. And then the technical stuff comes later. That's all. The director pitches me their crazy ideas, and I love to figure that stuff out. But story first, I think for me.
Is there a scene in Mr. Crockett that you're most proud of, and being able to figure out the shot, being able to bring the
Hmm.
technical side of it in?
Good question. Most proud of. There's two parts of it. I think the Crockett Hell World overall setup, I'm just really impressed with the team for pulling off because again, on our budget, to light that big of a space, and do it so it's not just exposed, but actually has a feeling to it. Uh, I was really pleased that we managed to pull it off. It was sort of a culmination of a lot of things. My gaffer, Nate Thompson, and I, we've been doing things for a long time, and he's very, very good with Luminaire on his iPad. And a lot of people use Blackout, and he uses Blackout too, but sometimes he changes kind of what system he's on depending on just how fast he needs to move. And we did this was just the culmination of years of us doing crazy weird lighting cues. We took all the tungsten lights that were rigged up in the air and we stuck them all through a rat pack receiver, one of the things that lets you DMX control tungsten like that, but we sent it wirelessly actually to his iPad, so he was able to program digitally all these lights to do these crazy oscillating patterns that I think a lot of people now associate with needing LEDs for, maybe if they haven't, if they grew up in the LED era. Like we found a way to basically new world control tungsten lights, which there's always been this control has been around forever. But it's like this specific way of doing it was really cool because we could program these repeatable oscillating patterns that it created this weird sense of like we talked about Crockett World being flamey and hellfiery, but we didn't want to actually have to have a lot of digital flames and post added. And so we tried to think about what would it mean um to Crockett to have that sort of effect. And so to me, he's always sort of like this mad circus ringleader, like showman kind of person. So I wanted to keep his lights up. I thought that was really important. Like in how, and one of the initial talks was, should all of them collapse to the floor? Should they all be on fire? Like, it was just trying to figure out how it was going to work. And I was like, no, what if they're just all broken? And so we like canted our railings in the air and we panned the lights in weird directions. And then we sent them all to these crazy sort of slow oscillating patterns. And so, when tungsten lights dim, they all get super warm as they get lower and lower. And so we white balanced and camera to amplify that. And we came up with this really fun thing where it feels kind of like fire, but it's not actually fire. And it still feels like he's on a stage, but it's really fucked up. And so I think between that look and God, what was the one that I was just thinking of? Oh, there's the finale, so not finale, but the sequence right before the finale, when they're going into they've got Rhonda, they go into that house, and it's basically when Crockett stabs Rhonda. That whole bit in that house had to be done in one night, and so from them entering, going downstairs, and getting sucked into Hell World, but like with all of the sneaking around, the stunt with Crockett, all Crockett style, like everything. And it was like a single day load in. It wasn't like we could pre-light anything. And so we had a really specific plan to basically globally light that whole house. And again, it kind of came back to how do we give the actors the freedom to move around, but also save ourselves time. We basically we rigged every bulb in there was controlled by us, all LED. We had light through every single window in a way that we could, no matter what direction we were facing, get cool accent patterns on the walls. And then we drove the scene itself with that like chandelier in the middle of the room and her flashlight. And we were able to get away with, I don't think we had a single extra light we placed in that room besides the global setup we did. It was just sort of all built in. We might have brought in some bounce or like again one tube to fill in some eye light, but it was so many shots to get and like multiple stunts, two floors, and it just had to be done in like 9 hours. It was crazy. And so um I'm pretty proud that we pulled that off in the time we did.
Well, congratulations on this project because you definitely brought a good feel to this movie, a nice creepy tone, but at the same time, it looks very sharp. You have a wonderful eye, and I can't wait to see what other projects you come up with.
Thank you. Appreciate it.